Hi, everyone. From me, Brent Graham of goodforthegame.co.za. Welcome to this Thursday night, 9 o'clock edition of the Handicap Rugby Chat That Matters. We are, of course, going to be talking Super Rugby Pacific. We're going into week 7, just 4 matches to talk on this week. And we'll also look at URC week 14. Of course, bearing in mind, we don't have teams yet on the Saturday matches. We do have the team selections that have come out for the Friday, but we'll talk on that. So let's introduce you to half the panel at this stage. I've been starting the show a bit later to allow Nathan to get in. So Nathan will be joining us, and he'll get in as soon as he can. But I've got a man we haven't seen for quite a while. He looks like he's neatened up the old beard a bit there, and it's at the Crow Tip, Chris Rowe. Chris, welcome back to the show, mate. It's been a long time since we've chatted.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Yeah, obviously, as you know, I've been also a bit of a back step on the betting, and obviously I did my other Patreon adventure that didn't go to one at the start. So I've just taken a little bit of breather and a back seat. But it's good to be back because I'm getting back in it. Super Rugby's got my juices going, and it's been a good tournament so far from my point of view, from a punting point of view. So it's been fun to watch. Like we were talking before we started, it's been I'll watch every back-to-back Super Rugby game, and I won't say that's the same thing for the URC, and that's the case we were making about when we left, right? We wouldn't miss a Super Rugby game, but you would miss a few URC games.
Yeah, look, from an entertainment point of view, it's a little bit. I mean, the URC still throw out some great games, but look, Super Rugby has been very, very entertaining. And I think I know you're an overs punter, and it's certainly been an overs tournament. I mean, sometimes ridiculous lines have arrived, like 69 and 70 and stuff like that.
Geez.
So, yeah, it certainly has been that. I'm looking at the live chat, quite a few boys joining us already, and most of them saying, welcome back, the Crow. Mark Dumphy, Farid saying,
how's it, Farid?
Stefan also saying, welcome back. JJ joining us as well. And then let's have a look. Nemo, I haven't read his comment. Nemo, no job. Kerwin, the Crow walked to Pablo and Admiral run.
Yeah.
Excellent. I always worry when I see a long comment, and I bring it up before I read it. Like, geez, what's the guy going to say? But nothing like that. We say Nemo, welcome. And then we got Reverend joining us, of course, from New Zealand. And Dan joining us from Twitter. Reminder to guys that watch on Twitter, and that is building up quite a lot, that you can comment on the show as well. Interesting rugby season, says Farid, a bit different from the past. And Chris, one thing I love about Super Rugby is the emphasis they've got now on keeping the ball in play. I haven't done this. I've been meaning to do this experiment, and I will do it, and might even call on other oaks to help with it. But like the one game a few weeks ago, I started timing the game at the start of the game. Chiefs, I can't remember who they were playing. But when the hooter went, so in other words, play continued a bit. But when the hooter went, there were 42 minutes on the clock. Only 2 minutes lost. Yeah. The next day, I walked on the treadmill for that Bulls-Lions game, I think it was, at Ellis Park. At Loftus. One of the games at Loftus. And 55 minutes later, I was still walking on the treadmill in the first half. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I just think that, irrespective of whether you think they're not tackling properly, whatever, which is certainly not the case in a lot of games, but I think that idea just to speed the game up is really, really good. And I hope actually that World Rugby follow that.
Yeah, well, yes, it's that speed of play. So guys are tiring. They are. So they are weak shoulders are coming, and then the 9 has free reign, and he comes into a ruck. All he knows is he can pass. He's not looking up. He's not looking ahead, looking if he's going to get obstructed. He's going, and the game's just going. And it's all clear to see what's happened. We've seen 80, 90, 100-point games 80% of the weekend. But I'm sure there's going to be regression, right? Because there was some sunny afternoon games there and so on. I think as we go into winter and stuff, we'll start to see regression. And we have seen some of the lines regress now as well, which is right. But it's almost like scary to put a line under 60 at the moment for Super Rugby, I'm sure, for the bookies.
No, that's it. I mean, when you see a line of 58, normally you'd be thinking, now you're a bit nervous on that.
But tell you what, I do miss a 54 line on a Friday morning. I won't lie, I do miss those mornings. But maybe they will return, but they're long gone, it seems.
No, for now, certainly they're long gone. Now, just to mention, if you're not on the weekly newsletter, you can get the link down below. We missed out on Leinster last week. I needed them to score one more try in the last 35 minutes, which they failed, but then hit a 13-1 ACCA, finishing on a varsity cup game. Wow, wasn't that fun on Monday night to watch that, knowing you had an ending on a 13-1 ACCA? So I actually had, and let me say straight up, I'm betting incredibly small on the varsity cup, but I've had a really successful varsity cup. I'm probably striking at about 70 to 80%. I've taken some big prices, and that. But I just know that if I put real money down, Chris, I know that it's going to go up in a.
Well,
I know that things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm also playing very casually at the moment, and I had a little echo on Monday evening, and I saw you were riding on the kits to come in, so I threw that in because I knew your luck had to come. It was this was coming home, so I was like, "No, I know you were sweating. I wasn't watching. I saw in the morning, but it arrived."
Yeah, actually, it was one of those strange things. I had lightning disruptions. I was watching the game, and then I thought, let me go to gym, and I thought the game had been called off. So I checked and seen that because it was the second half, the result would stand. And then suddenly I realized the game had actually restarted. And in the end, it sounds like they were just hanging on for the victory. But anyway, Stefan, you're 100% correct. That was Amy that was refereeing the game. I didn't want to mention the game. I feel a bit bad mentioning all the time. And for Reed says defenses tighten up as fitness improves. And that's also a good point. Because I think it is a good point that there's more space and therefore the softer shoulders at the end. But as the teams get into the season, I suppose the logic dictates that they do get a little bit fitter about that. Emil coming in, and if I sound like I'm waffling with Chris a little bit, I am to a degree because we obviously want to get Nathan in when we start talking Super Rugby. So we're just having a bit of a talk about it. And Emil saying Varsity Cup, Marty's -8.5 Wits seems like a steal. I must say I hadn't seen that line, Emil. From what I've seen of Wits, I've made good money opposing them this term. They got a young side, but they're not quite up to the standard. I'd have to agree with you. I don't care whether they're playing home or away. I would say Marty's 8.5 looks a cracking bet. And in fact, I'll probably start the Varsity Cup thread on the forum after this and put that one up. And Stefan agreeing with him there. Chris, let's just talk a little bit of Super Rugby. I'm going to just bring up the outright betting here and just get your thoughts on it. We've got the Chiefs trading at 15-10 favourites, Crusaders 3-1, Blues at just under 5-1. Brumbies at 7, Reds at 8.3, and then we got double figures, the balance. Anything at this stage, if I told you, listen, Chris, here's 10,000 Rand, you've got to stick it on a Super Rugby team at this point. Anything that jumps out to you there, or where would you put your money?
At that price, the Crusaders for sure. I think that's a bit higher than I would have had them. Absolutely. If the Crusaders at that price at the moment, the form that they are showing, I mean, they clearly can beat the Chiefs on their day if they face them in a final. So, yeah, that's a good price.
Yeah, and I mean, they could, if you look at the log there, I mean, the Crusaders have got a game in hand. Farida agreeing with you there, by the way, on the Crusaders. But the Crusaders have got a game in hand, so they win that. They do go above the Chiefs. But the interesting one for me here, it's actually, let's say, two interesting ones. We've, of course, got the Hurricanes and the Blues hovering around 8 spots at the moment. Now, the Hurricanes are in 8 and the Blues in 9. Now, Chris, you would expect both of those teams to get their act together and at least make the playoffs. But what that means is you could take the 15-10 Chiefs, for argument's sake, and they might be at home to the Blues in the quarterfinal. So you think you're getting, I'm getting a Drua, or I'm getting maybe a Waratahs or something in the quarters. You could be getting the defending champions in the quarterfinal. So it makes long-term betting a bit tricky.
So there's a shrewd experience rugby watcher picking that up, because that is so true. When you think you've hit the nail there, you've hit the odds on, and you're in, and up comes the out of the good team that was out of form early on. Yeah, it happens. It happens a lot.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do then. I'm just going to touch on the United Rugby Championship outright markets. I'm on Bet Exchange at the moment. I'm just going to bring that up. That's a little bit more boring normally, because Leinster are normally trading around the 5-10 mark. 11-20 Leinster. We've got the Bulls sort of 11-2. Now, obviously, we got a big odds-on favourite, but Leinster have been beaten from the same position in the last couple of years. So anything in the URC, any of the South African teams track that you think could be worth a bit of a nibble there, Chris? Because the nice thing is now you're not tying your money up for too long. I mean, we're a couple of months away from the end of the competition.
Shit, I must say this is a hard one. I mean, like you got to think somehow Lord averages Leinster are going to come through at some point. So you know that they are that's why they are the odds-on favourites. But you look at how the Bulls are playing. Like you look at the weekend, they're so inconsistent. Sharks inconsistent. Are Munster a championship side again? I don't know. I know they came through from the. They made a late run at the end, and then look, the Lions and the Stormers have a good chance with their 4 home games coming in as well, right? They're going to end up there and thereabouts, I think, at the end of the season. I think this is more like a feel, like, yeah, sure, these guys are going to get up and get up and beat Leinster, but I'm going to put my neck out, and I still think Leinster are going to win it. I just think there's going to be too much to prove. They're just too good, and at some point they're going to have to win it. And if they don't, then when they don't, I don't know who will take them out, because that log is going to vary now for the next 4 weeks. It's such a log jam there from 5 to 13. So
yeah, it is. I mean, we can.
But I don't know. Bulls did it twice, right? They beat them in the semi, and who was it? Munster the year before. Hey,
yeah.
Look.
It's normally because Leinster often fields a bit of a weaker team. No, not a weak team, but just a weaker team.
They fielded a weak against Munster, right? I mean, that was that big F up they did that year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a standout there. I think Glasgow obviously also very solid, well coached, very good team. Obviously defending champions, and I mean obviously they can go to 3-match winning run and beat Leinster. I think if Leinster are at home, because that was at Loftus last year, I think that was a free game. I still think if Leinster have got home advantage, they should be taking it.
Yeah. Now, just to mention your double that I'm saying you like it. You fancy Leinster, and I do too. I think this will be Leinster's year. 11-20 onto the Crusaders works out at 5.2 to 1 if you were looking for a little bit of a double there. But I'm going to roll into Super Rugby because I'm pretty sure that Nathan is going to join us as we get into the games. I just want to bring it up. I'll just stick with BetX. I like the layout of their site when it comes to particularly for the show, just to be able to see all the betting there. As you can see, I was on there. So was it the Hurricanes up against the Waratahs first up? I'm just going to pop on and see what the latest weather forecast was that I'd looked at.
I think it was okay. It looks like
it should be clear. Yeah, it looks pretty.
I don't think there's rain. But the wind in that cake tent sometimes messes up a game, messes up a good game.
Yeah. So minus 12.5 is the cap here, Chris. There, I think.
Yeah, it looks so.
Let me also just check. I think.
Oh wait, now I'm seeing rain. Hold on, but it looks like low percentage. Typical Wellington, bit of wind. Yeah. Your average Wellington night, I guess.
I'm on the wrong blog.
It'll be wet. It'll be dewy probably. It's getting that time. I can see the night games are getting sweater.
Well, there has been money for the Hurricanes. They've come in from minus 9.5 to minus 12.5. I must say, I looked at this.
No, I'm surprised by that. Yeah.
Are you surprised?
I don't get that. I mean, with the form that the Canes have been shown and the Tars have been shown, this is my Super Rugby standout. My mind a mistake. I don't understand how at this point Canes are 10-point better team. So firstly, I was thinking points, but this again, it's regression. I don't want to get carried away on the points. I'm not going to go overs every game. Even though that's what my mind will be thinking. But in terms of the cap, for me, that's a few points wrong standout in my opinion. I mean, but what worries me is there's a few high caps here against teams that seemingly are in good form, and it's looking at these games this weekend, it's confused me because I'm seeing a 7-point Canes win, about 1 to 12 Canes win.
Yeah, interesting. I was also looking at that type of thing. I haven't put a bet up on this one. I was actually going to listen to what yourself and Nathan said before putting a bet up. And I'm just all the bets, by the way, are in one blog there on Super Rugby. But yeah, just the Hurricanes just haven't fired this season. I was a little bit surprised as well to see such a line movement. It sort of, I think, came out after the teams were announced. Everyone is waiting for the Canes of last year, and that boat has sailed. So you're leaning on the plus.
So like if I'm missing something here, and because the bookies are becoming, as we know, every year they're getting better and they are getting closer and closer to these lines. Like I don't think what have I missed here, but then I'm sure Canes are capable of coming and winning by 20 points for sure. But I looking what's in front of me, I don't see that. I think the Tars have shown more than enough that they will live with the Canes in this game, and they're up there. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a few points wrong. And my recommendation is is a medium to high plus 12 starting point for me. The points is that's probably about right. That's probably why I capped it about 58, 59, 57.
Right, Darren coming in and he's saying Canes score early, then back the Tars on the plus. So that is often a strategy. I know my mate, old Brendan, often has a strategy like that. He'll say, wait for the early score and then go unders, that type of thing.
Yes, and also just purely watching, seeing the trends of the Canes. They lost it. They just scraped it against the Highlanders. They lost to Pasifika. what could be this could be a game that the Canes go out to a 21-point lead and the Tars come back to like 21-17 later in the game. So like maybe a first half bet on Canes points or first half points, I think would be a great shot. Yeah, I think they come out firing, but that they don't get away at the end of it against the Tars.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be very much what the forum guys are thinking. The guys who do like Canes are saying first half, and then possibly the Tars after that. The Ferrari's back at 13 for the Tars, which should add some punch. So the Tars there, although the money has come for the Hurricanes, Chris, and for that matter, the guys in the chat are generally leading towards the Waratahs. I'm going to move on. Nathan hasn't joined us yet, but when he comes in, we'll go back to this game and get his opinion. But Chris, let's move on to the second game, also taking place on Friday. It's the Brumbies up against the Highlanders. Here we've got 10.5. I'm just going to quickly look. There was 8.5. So there's been money for the Brumbies, minus 8.5 to minus 10.5. What are your thoughts on that?
This is again another one. I'm thinking to myself, the Highlanders have shown more than enough to go the Brumbies and win. I'm not saying the Tars are going to beat the Hurricanes, but the Highlanders can beat the Brumbies. I'm pretty sure of that. Again, another. I'm perplexed of these caps. I mean, maybe I'm out of form. Maybe it's showing. Maybe I've been out of it. But I'm not agreeing. I'm not agreeing with these caps. Brumbies are good, but I think that the Highlanders are well drilled this year. Nuggety. They're going to get stuck in. Again, I don't see separation here. But again,
it's interesting.
Have got it at 10.
Also the Brumbies, I mean, I know the Brumbies at home are a bit tight. I expected quite.
Friends?
The points line, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I was frozen for a while. Was I gone?
Oh, I'm actually not sure. The guys can tell. Like someone in the live chat can say.
Well, you're back now. But I was frozen for about 20 seconds there.
No problem. So, I wanted to ask you then on points in this game. We got 57.5. The forecast when I looked at it was, where did I put the weather link? So 57.5.
See, this is a game that would have been like 52 2 years ago. It's high. I mean, like I say, I like my overs, but I'm also not silly, right? When it starts getting close to 60, I know I'm not going all in, right? But I think if the conditions are good there, I think I'm not. Again, as you know, traditionally overs. Again, it's not the points here I'm looking at. It would be the cap. This is a beautiful like alt plus cap for me. Double these first two games. Get it.
I've lost Chris there. I don't know if anyone else has, or if it's my problem. Chris, just give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me.
I can hear you. I'm going to change my network though. I
lost you. Oh, there you're back. I don't know if it's my side or your side. I lost you for a bit there. Sorry.
Yeah, I can change my network to see. Or do it okay? Just go.
Well, maybe the guys in the live chat can just mention. It's possible they can actually hear both of us, and it's just like maybe my side or your side. But we'll carry on until someone mentions there might be an issue, and then we can always try something. I'm just looking. Okay. I see Nathan still. I was worried I might have missed him sneaking in, but Nathan hasn't joined us yet. So let's continue with the Saturday morning games. Here we've got a big handicap, Chris. Crusaders v Moana Pasifika. I'll quickly run down to the team so it's ready for us when we want to come to that. But having a look here, we got a handicap of minus 21.5. Been pretty stable all week. I think that there was a bit of 24.5 at one stage that seemed to come in, and now it's gone out. Gone out again. What do you think of this game?
Yeah, well, again, my style, my strategies, I'm not a massive minus handicap, generally, whoever's playing, even though if you had to put a gun to my head and bet on the cap on this game, it would be the minus. But here's what I like the points. I think the points are 57. I think this is going to have a few points, I think. I think this game hasn't gone as many points as I thought in the past, but I think the Crusaders are going to be too hard to handle at the moment, and Pasifika are a dream at leaking points. So I think this is once one of the first of the standout that this game will go. I think this game goes over 60. I don't like the cap; it's too high because Pasifika can have a great 40 minutes and keep that cap in check.
Well, JJ Bauer, very much in alignment with you. He's just focusing in on Crusaders' point. He's saying over 22.5.
So yes. So sorry, I pulled out Crusaders over 6.5 tries at close to 1.8. I think if you worried about points, I think they're scoring 7 to 8 tries. Yes, I like that 7 tries for Crusaders. If you're worried about kicks not going over or not taking penalties.
Nemo is saying I should start a 6-week tipping comp for the donations charity for the winner. Yeah, I love the competitions. I must say, I've done a few Super Brews, got a few ideas for competitions myself, and sometimes it's just the admin that can get you. But I think we'll do something in the forum soon. I know it's not related to rugby, but I think we're definitely going to do something for the golf. The US Masters Golf is coming up, so that should be good. But let's hold things there for a second. We've got Nathan joining us. Nathan, how are you? Can you hear us loud and clear?
Yeah, loud and clear. How you doing, guys?
Excellent, man. Excellent.
Chris, how you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Good to see you.
You too.
And Nathan, I think what we'll do, we had a bit of a general chat at the start, and we've obviously moved on the games, but I'll start you off on this game, and then we're going to jump back to the Friday games and just get your views on that, and then the two of you can go for it on the final game. So we're talking Crusaders, Moana Pasifika. Just saying here, the handicap, for a high handicap, it's actually been fairly stable. I know at one stage, BetExchange themselves went minus 24.5 Pasifika, then came into 20.5, and I see now it's moved to 21.5. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything as high as 24. I've seen 22, I think, on Pinnacle, and then something around about this number. So I was pretty happy to take the Crusaders at some of the early numbers, and I still think there's value there even now. So I think there was suspicion coming into this game that maybe the Crusaders would be tempted to rest some folks with a trip to Fiji coming up next week. And in my mind, they haven't really done that. I mean, even looking at the bench, like if they were really resting, they wouldn't put Taylor and Williams on there. So I think they mean business here. I don't have a problem actually with James O'Connor at 10. I think that's actually possibly a plus. And same with Noah Hotham. He's a really good player who probably would have been the starting 9 if he hadn't hurt his ankle, I think, early on in the comp, maybe in the first week. So I think it's a strong lineup. Moana, they've rotated a little bit in the front row, which I never really like to see. They've got their captain on the bench and their kind of breakout player, Tamofalai, who would normally be on the wing, is not there. Admittedly, they've got Alamano back, who's also a good player. So, yeah, just a few warning signs, I guess, there for Moana. And, if you looked into last week's game, I think the takeaway was, pretty clearly that the Chiefs took the foot off the gas. I don't think necessarily that the Crusaders will make the same mistake, partly because I think they've got a lot to prove this year, so they wouldn't want to show any signs of weakness. So, yeah, I still think that there's value here on the Crusaders.
And they can they can actually go top of the table here, Nathan, with a win here. I mean, which we expect them to get, obviously, the win, but I mean, they could really put some pressure on the Chiefs with piling on the points here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, sorry.
So yeah, I'm using Ultimate Rugby app here to check, because I was just checking now when I was doing my team sheets. They got Preston and Kamara at 9 and 10. So I don't know if that's a mistake.
I can tell you that Ultimate Rugby are completely useless.
Okay, I was just looking at it now. I just had it open.
I can tell you that
they get the grounds wrong quite often. They get the grounds wrong, and then I copy it, and then
I'm just pointing it out to anyone else as well who uses Ultimate.
Yeah. I to be honest with you, I used to use Ultimate to scrape lineups, and earlier, I think the end of last year, I switched away from it because I just didn't trust the teams that they put out. They
weren't lined up right sometimes. Did you notice the numbering against the names are not right a lot of the time?
That's right. And if you're trying to scrape something like that, they would leave blanks in places, and it was just a nightmare to try and actually get it. So I don't use Ultimate Rugby anymore. They would also they would do weird things with player names and stuff. It wasn't good. And the other thing was that sometimes they they wouldn't even put the lineups out until after the game had started, like for some of the leagues, like in France, for instance. So yeah, just it wasn't a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking because it's quick 2 clicks down what I'm like looking at now. But the thing is, just going back, because I did my Crusaders review, but the Hotham and O'Connor doesn't change my view. Because I did, yeah, that's also what I wanted to say.
And Nathan, I want to ask you a question, but this is just, you were expecting the Crusaders might rest players here, and they haven't. Do we read anything into that? Can we expect the Crusaders? Do you think they're going to rather send a weaker team to Fiji?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I just don't think so. I think one of the good things about this competition having buys, and more frequent buys, because it's just the way the draws thrown up, is that, yeah, I think there is plenty of opportunity to rest, like I think more so than in previous years, which is great, I think, from a betting perspective, because, you kind of have a bit more trust in the lineups, and also in the, I guess in some of the motivational bits. We might come to that, talking about URC and my views on URC motivation, but anyway.
Yeah.
No, that's it. I mean, next week, your URC, obviously next week you've got the Champions Cup. So exactly what you're saying now. You've got to, until you see those team selections, you've got to make assumptions. Whereas at least with the Super Rugby, it's not interfering with any other competitions, and you're getting a generally a strength versus strength matches. I'd say 95% of the time. Right, let's have a look. I just want to see if there's anything else. O'Connor has found serious form at 10, says Fareed. So he's quite happy with O'Connor in there, much like you are there, Nathan. Nathan, I'm going to jump back to the first game, Hurricanes against Waratahs. And yeah, get your views on this one. We got a minus 12.5 handicap. In South Africa, it was minus 9.5 until the team sheets came out, and then it seemed to suddenly move to 12.5. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yep, yeah, 100%. Even as high as 13. So, and the only thing that's surprising about that to me is that it took so long to get here. So I think that was where I had it projected basically all week. So in terms of my process, so I'll predict what I think the lineups are going to be and run some numbers on a Sunday or a Monday, and then obviously do it again after the team sheets came out. And I think, I sent you my projections, which was, right around this. I think it was like 13 or 14, like on Wednesdays, straight after. And at that point, I think it was still minus 8.5. So I didn't see that there were no surprises really in the lineups to me. So yeah, it's one of these strange things, I think, where, sometimes it just takes a little while for the message to get through. I think it's capped right where it is. And, I think it's fairly explainable, like in my mind, in the sense that I think that, we talked about the Hurricanes getting the band back together, and it is starting to look more like, a Hurricanes team of last year. And I think some people will kind of point for Godfrey being out. I don't think there's much between him and Hohepa, if I'm honest. I think there's been maybe a bit of hype around Godfrey. I don't think he's been anything special. I think Hohepa is perfectly fine in that position.
Chris, anything to add? I guess to some.
Well, there's the answer we're looking for, because I didn't. I'm opposite to you. I don't see it at all. I'm looking at the log. I'm looking at the last 3 games. I don't, but I do know that the Canes are capable. I said they can win by 20. I just don't see it tomorrow. Maybe the band plays well. Maybe they need a game to get together. Might be rusty. But you're right. If they switch on, they should be winning by 20. But. Yeah, that's just we have different views.
I think looking at the table is, in general, is not a good thing to do as a bettor. Like, I think it's it's a lot of times it's really deceptive. I think it's
I don't make my bets. I'm looking at the last 3 games. I don't see a Cairns team that's better than Tars. That's just but I agree that they're a better side.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is if you look at the Hurricanes team from the early part of the season, it's quite a different looking team.
I get you. No, I get you.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's scary.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is with the Waratahs, like when they were really bad last year, they had a bit of a crisis in the front row, and then they're not at crisis point, but they are onto their 3rd and 4th choice hooker. at the moment. And I don't think that's ever a good thing. So
and Karifi's played out of his skin, and he's
absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a lot of positives. I think we'll see Ruben Love at 10 at some point too. When the bench comes on.
We're talking cap here, but I'm liking Kane's first half anyway. I think they come out the blocks fast. I think they go out to a strong lead, and I think that's where I'm going to be aiming betting, because that cap is a bit scary for me, and the points is well capped.
Yeah, if Tars can neutralise Karifi, they're a good win. Sure. Yeah, I mean, anything can happen, right? It's just about what's the most likely thing to happen, and that seems to me is pretty unlikely. The other thing, and we kind of, you hear that a lot in NFL betting. They talk about teams coming off a bye. We did touch on it briefly last week, just in reference to the Force game, and that their kind of brains trust players had the week off and were possibly looking ahead to the Drua game. Whether that was a factor in what was a pretty big blowout, I don't know. But I think there is something to that, in the sense that the Hurricanes have had 2 weeks now to look at the Tars, think about what they're going to do. Whereas obviously, the Tars are only looking ahead to the Brumbies games. So, I think there is potentially something in there as well.
Right, let's move on to the next game. I mean, I think it is one of those games, and that's the beauty of handicaps, is that you do get splits. I think the live chat, quite a few Tars supporters, but a lot of guys saying Hurricanes first half as well. But Nathan, to take you to the next game, Brumbies up against the Highlanders. Yeah, we got a cap of -10.5. There was sort of a 2-point movement on Bet Exchange over the last day or so from -8.5.
Yeah. I'm on the Brumbies here, and I still would be, like, even at the current number. I've faded the Highlanders in the last 2 weeks, and that's been profitable. I don't see what I think a lot of other people see in the Highlanders. I think they're just a bog average team. I could pretty much rinse and repeat the things I've said about them from previous weeks. I think they've been overly reliant on against the run of play, long distance tries. That's not sustainable. That's not something that's just luck. It doesn't last. And I think possibly a bad spot for the Brumbies, coming up against the Brumbies, in the sense that that loss will really spur them on. I think that loss was an outlier. I don't think it's reflective of the Brumbies. I think these teams are pretty much the same teams as they were last year, where Brumbies were a decent semi-final team, and the Highlanders are at best mid-table, possibly like a bottom 3 or 4 team.
Right. The one thing that worries me about the Brumbies this season is a habit of making some pretty slow starts. Let's see what the Admiral has come in with. I haven't read his comment yet. Apologies, you can't make the show properly, but a quick question to Nathan. Would your projection change if the Hurricanes weren't coming off a bye, or if the Tars weren't on a long run with no break?
No. So I understand the question, but it's not something that I am building into the projection, and I've looked at these things, and a lot of the time they add more noise than they do signal, and so you kind of have to pick and choose the things that you're including. But what I do is then there be factors that are sort of outside what's being modelled, and sometimes I just have those at the back of the mind.
Right, so they won't have an impact on your model, but they might ultimately influence your decision there.
They're qualitative things rather than quantitative, I think, is probably the short answer. Yeah.
Right. Well, we have talked about Crusaders Pacifica. I must say the first 2 games, Chris and Nathan, are very much on.
It's obviously, it is.
100%. But let's go to the last game, and Chris, I'll bring you back in, give you first crack at the Reds up against the Force. Here we've got a handicap of 6.5. A lot of money for the Force here. What was it? I'll just quickly pop to the blog. I think the Brumbies were sort of they were. I'm sorry, I'm talking about they were -11.5, -11.5 into -6.5. So lots of money for the visitors against the Reds. Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that's a fair shot. I had strong feelings the first games until Nathan blew me out the water there. But this is out of the 4 Super Rugby games, this is my least ones that I have an opinion. I probably would have, because of that, I would have been targeting the points again. But the weather looks like a typical humid, rainy Brisbane day there, which can turn. Remember those Aussie derbies when they used to be 20-point games in those conditions? But I don't think it's going to be that way. So I'm going to, at the moment, to be honest, Brent, I don't have a firm view, but I can understand the love for the Force. And I think the Force points is around 20, 21, 22, I think I saw. I think that could be a good
21,
shot.
22.
I think if this is a points game, I think Force should contribute into the 20s.
Well, you mentioned points. I did put an early bet up on the blog because I had a look at conditions and they didn't look great, and the points on 58.5 just looked too high. I think that has come in. Yeah, it's actually in even further than it was. It's into 52.5. So let's go to Nathan now on this game. Nathan, is that some of your money forcing the Force price in there?
Yeah, funny that you say that. Yes, it is. Yeah, and this was the game coming into the week where I suspected that I wouldn't not be involved, and all of that kind of changed when the teams came out, because like my original prediction was right on that number around 11, and then when it came out, I think the number I sent you was something closer to 8, and I think I said in the chat that like I liked what I was seeing for the Force based on that. I didn't expect it to go as far as it did, like, moving from where it was, which was sort of 12.5, at the time that I was looking at it, it's a 6.5. It's a huge move. I think it's explainable. I'm not sure. I personally wouldn't take the Force at the 6.5. I think it's probably lined about right where it is, possibly even shaded slightly to the Reds, which, sort of tells you a little bit of something about how fine the margins are sometimes when you're betting, right? That it's like, I'm happy to bet at 12.5, 11.5, but like I wouldn't sort of carry on betting it past some of these numbers. But the way I explained it, I think in the chat, was that the Reds now are missing an entire Wallabies front row and an entire Wallabies back row, basically. I mean, obviously, Syria is a Wallaby as well, but their typical back row would be Wilson, Wright, and McWright. And they're all out. And then their starting front row, I think, would be Nongalore, Fezler, and got the other guy's name. Yeah, it'll come back to me. But anyway, Sep Bayangasi, I think his name is, the other starting prop. So all of those guys out, right? So you're looking at, if you actually listed out the Reds players that are out and made a 15 out of it, you're talking about probably 2/3 of a Wallabies team. Like it's they're kind of like really sneakily injured. Some teams like the Blues, they're it's kind of like all over the papers how injured they are. Like they're banging the drum about this is the problem. The Reds have got a pretty big injury toll. There's also guys like Josh Fluke and Jock Campbell. So yeah, like they've actually on the kind of down low been decimated a little bit by injuries. So I think this is a game that the Force will be well up for. Like I wouldn't surprise me if they won it. I think that brains trust at 9-10, I think for them is has been really pivotal. So it's kind of a long way of saying I wouldn't actually get involved at the current number, but I think it's explainable why it's moved to where it has.
That's it. The market's moved, and as you said, maybe it's even moved a point or two more than it should have. So I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, based on what I now see in the team news, the Force on the plus at sort of 12.5, 11.5 was the way to go. But I think that's about right. I would struggle to go against the Reds at home at sort of the 6.5 point mark.
Would have loved this point slide in a dry Perth this weekend. Because it would have been well over 60, 70, but it's that's what I would have been able to looking at. But it's a wet Brisbane, so it's scary.
Yeah, even in a wet Brisbane, I mean 52.5. I mean, as I said, the 58.5 was obviously the bet because whether it arrived or not. I mean, you have caught the market there, so it was the right play at the time. But 52.5, just the way the Super Rugby's been going. I don't almost care what the conditions are. I'd battle to go under the 52.5.
I've been burnt so many times, even been on like over 45 sometimes with these games, and it's like 22-15. It's just look, I don't think it's going to be that. And I hate weather. I mean, how many times I've been caught out by the weather? It drives me nuts. If the weather's bad, I try wait until to actually see the conditions.
Right. Well, let's move on then. Yeah. And Nathan, sorry, I don't know if you've had a chance to have a bit of a look at the URC. If you want to, I don't think we're going to have a long discussion on the URC because we haven't got teams yet, but just maybe a quick chat on each game, maybe anything we're looking out for? I've said to Chris, if he doesn't fancy anything, just pass on it as well. You want to?
Yeah, I haven't looked, so I'm happy to sit in and just listen. But no, I literally haven't looked. In fact, I'm probably going to park my URC betting for a couple of weeks, maybe until we get to the other side of the Champions Cup. And because what I've found, like my URC has not been good this year. When I went back and looked at the same time last year, so probably like around the Christmas period, right through until around about now, maybe kind of the April, it was very flat. Like where I'd have months, a couple of months of URC betting where I came out exactly the same places I started. So it was wasn't even worth my time actually doing it. And I've found the same thing this year. And I could kind of speculate on the theory about why that is, but I don't know if you agree with this, Chris. But like I just think so much of the motivation is questionable. I just wonder about whether players in the Northern Hemisphere teams are looking at the internationals and maybe they're not going hard because they don't want to get injured, or maybe in the South African teams, like whether they even want to be there half the time, whether they care. It's just a very I like the theory behind this competition. So I'm not crapping on the URC because I think it's in general is good. Because I don't want to get involved in this kind of Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere nonsense. I don't have time for that. But I just wonder. A URC competition would be great, like if you took away all the distractions. But it's just so stop-start. And you've got South African teams kind of playing their own mini competition while everybody else is away doing something else. And then some teams come back and you're trying to guess do they care about Europe or not? It's it's very strange.
Yes, spot on. I agree with you. And it's been said there's just the stop-starting nature of it. Internationals disappearing for the international. You just can't get a nice, clear, all-in run like Super Rugby is. The guys are all in, no stops. Most the odd buys, but it's the consistency's there. And in my betting, I like that consistency, like other matchups and the forms close into the game day. So I totally agree. It's just for me, it's just these guys are just too much rugby, too much traveling, and too much not heart in it. So you just get these really odd games of rugby getting thrown up in the URC.
Yeah, I think guys, both good points. And when Nathan said something there that actually got me thinking. I mean, we won't debate that now. But if there was a way of doing it, that the United Rugby Championship, instead of being a 7-month competition, was maybe a 3-month competition, and then perhaps the Champions Cup took place the following year, like the other side of the Six Nations or something. But I think that's a hell of a good point, and I think it would make it a lot better. And personally, I mean, I do enjoy the comp, and like Nathan says, I'm also not against the comp, but it's just that disruption. I always struggle to get it. Even I remember in the Curry Cup in South Africa, that you'd have 12 intense weeks of Curry Cup, and then the semi-finals, and then they would have a bye before the final. And it was like everyone was so into the Curry Cup, it was great. And then you have this bye, and it was always the final was it was still the final, but it was never the same. It's going straight in from the semi-final to the final. And so I agree 100% with those comments on the URC, and maybe in time they can sort it.
And when you need to beat Boland to get into the top 4, and you only win by 2 points at Wellington Park, those days were tough. Those were some games.
Yes.
But
anyway,
to Nathan's point about the South African teams, and I love the Heineken Cup, the European Cup, but I'm gonna say we don't belong there. We belong, if anything, we're Super Rugby and URC. Okay, fine. Maybe in a few years I'll buy into it. But I think when the Europe's going, if we had our own internal competition, Stormers, Lions, Sharks, bring in the Cheetahs, just have that going for a trophy, bring it to the intensity of the Curry Cup was. I would be happy with that, and I think our guys would be all up for it. But this in and out and trying to care about Europe because Europe holds on to it so dearly, it's not going to cut it for our guys for a very long time, and you can see it.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on then to the URC, and we'll run through those matches, starting with the Ulster against the Stormers. Chris, that's on Friday night. We've got Ulster here -1.5. They were priced as underdogs initially, plus 2.5.
I saw that. When I came in today, I saw the change. Yeah.
And I capped it. I actually thought Ulster. I capped it as high, which is, I admit, probably a bit too high. I thought Ulster would be like sort of -5.5. So the lines moved not all the way to my line, but somewhere in the middle there. I just put on the good for the game preview. I went Ulster. There's some 17 to 20 available at poker bet. That's what I've taken on this game. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I also I would have capped this at Ulster 3-4 points favorites, not Stormers. Yeah, okay, Stormers have they've won two good games on the road now, and they've got their Galanta and Sasha have made a big difference there. But I'm still not convinced that this is again just watching rugby and watching the Stormers for years and years. This is a game the Stormers come in brain dead. They just want to get home for that fourth home run. They also up for it. It's not going well for the first 20 minutes. They don't get back into it. This is like a bogey typical game that the Stormers probably will lose, and I think they will lose. And I agree with you. I agree Ulster will win. I don't think Stormers should be favourites. So any Ulster plus here is the right bet.
Nathan, from your side, I'll say if you want to just butt in, if you want to add anything. I know you said you'd listen in, but if you do want to add anything on any of the games, just butt in. We'll stick up your hand and we'll pull you in. Yeah,
that's probably the only game that I do have anything to say about, and the only reason I do is that I've seen the Admirals on the Stormers on the minus, and then I saw Pablo was on Ulster on the other side, so clearly a bit of division there. I mean, that tells me that
the draw.
The draw's on. It kind of tells me that maybe it's one to stay away from.
Yeah,
well, 100%. The Stormers with Sasha and Galanta in the line, they have a chance. They've been playing well enough to win. But it's for me, it's the motivation factor. There's so many games I think South African teams on paper and form are going to say maybe there's also that bias. But this is my problem with the URC. This is why I can't go all in on a lot of these games, because you just don't know. And there's the motivation. I know Free's saying. I mean, obviously Stormers get this win and then go into their home run. This will be a big win for them. So yeah, maybe their motivation will be there. But they've gone to a quarterfinal in Europe and lost by 40 points to a crappy Exeter, so who knows?
Yeah, a game probably not to get too involved in. I can tell you there is a bit of rain forecast, so 48.5 points. I was initially thinking overs in this game, but when I saw the forecast, I'm also probably calling it a no bet there. Moving on to Friday night's other game, Edinburgh up against the Dragons. There's been some money since the teams have come out here. Edinburgh, they've always been pretty big, I think around 18, 19.5. They're up to -21.5 now. They've got some Scottish internationals back. And we've got a points line here of 52.5. Chris, anything on this game? I mean, it's the same time as the Stormers game, so I normally find in that situation, like I know what I'm watching the Stormers game. I'm not watching Edinburgh Dragons. Yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I say going to my bets on URC is simple, and there's certain trends and strategies I've that's been successful. And one of them, you've heard me say this before, Edinburgh home points has been very successful to me in the past. They haven't been as good, them and Glasgow. We'll talk about Glasgow later as well. But I mean, at home against the Dragons with their Scottish internationals, Edinburgh will be beating their points line. I think I haven't seen it, but I'll be happy to take anything for even a 40. 52. It's just that's a matter of how much the Dragons are going to contribute, and so I would just keep to my Edinburgh point strategy.
Yeah, so Edinburgh there will probably be about 36.5 points. So it's well within your range to play there.
There was a time they were 30. They'll offer 32, and they would come over close to 40 a lot of the games. So so I'm going to keep it there. Keep it, especially like the Dragons. I think they should cover it.
Just looking ahead to next week. So Edinburgh have got the Lions in the Challenge Cup, and the Dragons have got the week off, I think, for being terrible. So if you were going to throw something just off the top of your head, that maybe it's Edinburgh first half handicap, because they'll probably run it up. Whether they start pulling people early, thinking about next week, and when the Dragons don't have that problem.
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah. I like that logic.
Yeah,
I like that logic. First half handicaps for me have never been great, but every now and again one does stand out, and I like Nathan's logic there, Chris. Get the job done, and then start thinking about next week.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. When I'm very confident on a team, you like say points, caps, tries. I try to find the best value there where possible. Even the first, even half. I like betting halves as well. Not all the time, but I agree with you.
Bulls for me, very disappointing last week in what was a disappointing game against Leinster. They got up with a last-minute victory to beat Leinster there, but they were sort of, I think, started 7 or 8 point favourites. They play against the Zebre side that nearly pulled up a massive shock last week against the Sharks. Who started that, I think, 22 or 23 point underdogs in the end. We've got the Bulls here, Chris, at minus 20.5. We don't have any points lines for the Saturday game, so we'll focus on the Caps. Can you trust this Bulls team? And are bookmakers still underestimating a Zebre side that certainly, while all the internationals were away, both Italian internationals and others overseas, they've actually had a pretty good run of things of late. Are they being underestimated by the bookies?
I think so. So say again, URC is, this is where I do battle to find a read on URC games. And here's another one. 2-3 years ago, I'm like, Bulls by 50, easy. Well, not easy. Like I would be. That's where my head's at. That's what I'm thinking. But now I'm thinking, it could be a 35-30 game. Easy. They could be right there with them, and the Bulls just don't. They don't give you the confidence. You're right, like you said. And that performance, I mean, and obviously, like, how have the Sharks flattered Zebre last week? Or are Zebre that good? As you know me, I've never placed $1, and I never will on Zebre. Maybe I will one day. I've never bet on Zebre because I've never trusted them. But they showed a lot last week. So yeah, I think I must have. I thought there'd be more points in that Leinster game, but I was probably Brad Reed because when they go at each other, they do neutralize each other. But I think this is some points at Loftus if the weather's good. So I don't know what's the line. I think it'll be close to 60, right?
Yeah, we don't have a line. I reckon it'll
be close to 60.
Line. But yeah, just a word of caution. I'm not in Pretoria, but I'm 60 kilometers away. We've had some real cloudbursts in Johannesburg this week. So just a word of caution on conditions there. I haven't looked at the forecast for that. Well, I actually have looked at the forecast. Let's have a quick look at what we're looking at. It looks hot and clear. And I'm actually looking a little. I'm thinking Zebre points in this game. I think the Bulls will win comfortably. Whether they'll beat the handicap, I'm not sure. But I will probably have a look if conditions are decent at Zebre. I mean, I was pretty impressed with him scoring 34 points or whatever in Durban last week. The Sharks were awful, but I'm looking Zebre points.
Yeah, Bulls do go missing. They're not that Bulls team of 15 years ago where they could hold out the Crusaders and They score 2 tries and they go on holiday. Then we have to play again. Then they score 2 tries and they're back on holiday. Keep the teams in it. So I agree with you.
Well, if the Bulls put out a strong team for this game, then you make sure you're on Bayonne next week. Bulls away at Bayonne. I mean, if they put out a strong team in this game, they're probably sending the reserves to France.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Something good to look at that. But just one thing for me, when I look at this Bulls team, and I look at, even when they're putting out what you'd consider a strongish team, it just doesn't seem that strong anymore. There's just I see so many jolly weak links, particularly in the back line there. So going to be interesting. But as you say, if they feel the full strength side, then by all means oppose them next week. 2M systems coming in. Bulls not as loose as the Sharks. They will not give Zebre the loose chances. Zebre due for a 30-point loss. Well, they might be due for it, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm looking at points here.
I don't know if it's trade. I don't know if you've noticed as well, Nathan. I also find these traveling teams to South Africa, if they play these 2 big sides, they hold the first game well, but they can fade in the second. And we could see a Zebre fade here for sure if the Bulls are focused.
Yeah, quite possibly there. Let's move on to the next game. Connacht up against Munster. This game has been played, I believe, it's in sort of neutral territory in Ireland. The money has come for Munster here. They opened, I think, half a point favourite, and they now are basically 3.5 point favourites. Chris, this is not a game I'm getting involved in. Might look at the point lines close to the time. Are we going to pass on this one? You got any views?
Yeah, again, as I said, I'm very because I don't know. URC messes my brain up, and when I do bet, I try to keep it simple. And the Irish and Welsh derbies, I just generally look at the home side. If I'm going to play it and I feel up for it, I'll look at the home, look at the value there, where the lines are. But I don't really have strong opinions on it. I don't invest a lot of my bankroll on these games.
Right, Scarlets up against the Ospreys. This week
Same.
we've got a handicap of -3.5 Scarlets on this game.
Yeah.
For me, the Ospreys are a bit of value here. I'll tell you that I think Ospreys potentially a board bet here at 1.55, which is what 31 to 20. I've been impressed with the Ospreys. Of all the Welsh teams, they've actually impressed me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, they have, yeah, but also Scarlets themselves are a much better side this year. So kudos to them to being put favourites, and I can see that, and I can agree that they're favourites. Maybe that's maybe a bit generous, actually. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 point favourites, I would have kept it. I haven't looked long enough to have a strong firm on my cap, but yes, Ospreys are big runners, yeah. So yeah.
Right, I was just having a look. Blake was just saying in the Munster game, either side by 7 or less. I see Bet Exchange don't have that market up yet, but I think that's exactly the type of bet.
I was having a quick look. I was having a quick look. That also stood out to me. This is a standout try bet game.
Yes, and Blake is saying also Ospreys or either team by 7 or less. That could be a nice little double to take there. And Farid is saying Ospreys can give them the Scarlets a real run. Let's move on to the
Ospreys also have beaten them. They got their number on them, right? So if it goes again, I like to bet on matchups, and if the teams that they've mentioned, Ospreys seem to have their number, so they are runners. It's a great shot. So I'm just confirming that, Brent.
Right, well, let's move on now. We've got all of our favourite team, the Sharks, are playing against Leinster at home. Now, this is a very interesting one because we kind of know, and the Admiral has been keeping an eye on Instagram accounts and all the rest. So what we know is Leinster are playing next week in the Champions Cup. They seem to have sent some of their bigger players back to Ireland. So this is not going to be... Last week was an under-strength Leinster team, but it still had a lot of strength in it. This week should be weaker. So not surprising, the Admiral took the -6.5. Not surprising to see the line move. The problem for me, Chris, is, I mean, they beat Zebre by 1 point last week. They've turned in some absolute disastrous performances. I just can't, as much as the logic tells me the Sharks should run away with this game, I can't bring myself to part with money on them.
I'm with you. I can't either. I can't do it. This is tricky. I'm not getting involved. Even the points, because Leinster, in my mind, I also think Leinster. When I think of good teams, good players, I think of also chances and the points getting scored. But Leinster on this season, I've looked. Leinster have let me down on points as well, so I'm not even going to look at points as well because So Leinster's been a bogey team for me this season, no matter whether they're strong or weak. So I'm gonna, and Sharks are the Sharks as well. So no strong play for me.
I've got to bring Nathan in here. I was just going to say with that number being outside the bonus point as well, like that, because if Leinster want to get anything out of this, like that might be what they're targeting, So if it was 6.5, maybe, but 8.5,
we're open,
not too sure,
But I was going to bring you in for a comment on that because I know you've chuckled a few times when I've gone on the Sharks, like you're like a lab rat, a slow learner.
No, I've made that mistake myself, so I'm not in a position to criticise. So enough said about the Sharks.
Did the Sharks win a trophy last season? It's messed up there. It's like it's also the Bulls. Bulls beating Leinster on the semi. The Sharks going and winning that final where that form came from nowhere. That's the thing about URC. We're just reiterating for me. When the Sharks and the Bulls played in the Super Rugby, and it was these matchups we saw all the time, and they came in 10 game competition, I could read the Bulls and Sharks quite easily. Like I just cannot read them in the URC, and they've also shown it. I mean, they've also shown that form. It's horrible.
Well, we'll go on to Benetton up against Cardiff. This is one of the 9:35 kickoffs on Saturday night, South African time. We've got a handicap -8.5 here. Benetton favourite at home. They were big favourites. I can't remember the story last week. Quite a bit of money came for them last week. I think it was always, and they actually, I think they barely scraped home. They actually delivered part of my 13-1 ACCA, but they literally scraped home with a try in the last minute. What do you think here? Benetton against Cardiff -8.5. The days of Italian sides always been underdogs are over, but 8.5. I don't know. I'm leaving this game.
Yeah, no, one game also. There's enough other games that all have my interest. But I think Benetton will win, though. That's just
Yeah,
that's just a
maybe
prediction.
if you're looking for an interest on this game, sometimes you want to stick a little multiple together just for an interest. So you don't want to throw much. For me, this is a Benetton 1-12 game potentially, or something along those lines. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Well, let's move on to the Glasgow against the Lions, the South African game. The Warriors against the Lions. This is also 9:35. So once again, I won't be watching the Benetton game. I'll probably have more of an interest in this Glasgow Lions game. Here we got a handicap of -13.5 Glasgow. It's been fairly stable all week. If anything, a little bit of money for the home team from what I can tell. And the Lions, I thought they were quite disappointing last week in not getting the win. I thought, I watched the game. I thought they actually threw their chances away quite a bit. And now Glasgow, I would imagine, are going to also include most of their Scottish internationals. What do you think here, Chris?
Yeah, again, like I said, back in Glasgow the last few seasons has served me well, and obviously them going all the way last season proved that. And again, I mean, like I said, I was way more on South African sides at the start of the URC, and I would have taken Lions plus 13 any day of the week 2 years ago. But now that I've seen how this competition works, Glasgow perform at home. Their Lions are just 2% off the pace. Glasgow win will cover the cap. I wouldn't be reading that game like say 2 years ago. So I think Glasgow are great. They are a good side. Lions can compete with them, but I'm going to wait close. I'll see how the weekend's going before I have a closer look at this game. But the cap I was just as a feeling. Like I don't have much validation. It feels too high. But Glasgow are a good side, and they could beat this cap. So sorry, not much to give there. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, most people are going to wait, but you either see a bit of early value or you wait for the team. So just really to get a feel for the game. I can't tell you whether there's rain forecast before the game, so that's always a bit of a flag for me. It is a synthetic surface, so that I'm not worried about the surface. But the weather forecast only has to be a couple of hours out, and suddenly the rain's during the game. So I'll certainly be having a look closer to kick off on that one. Let's get a live to see who's commented there. Farida saying Glasgow is good for the cap, and the 2M systems, Lions like the Sharks, you never know what
you never know. That's the thing, you never know what you get. Like you pretty much know what you're going to get from Glasgow with their Scottish international. That's what I'm saying. If I'm going to back something, I'm going to back Glasgow. I'm not going to back Lions, if I'm going to be on a side.
Okay, well, let's bring this show home then. It's been a long one, lots of rugby to talk about, and certainly I think you can almost sense, as much as our South African guys enjoy the URC, it's actually the Super Rugby that we actually look a little bit more forward to and are enjoying at the moment. So let me just ask you, gents, to wrap up. And Nathan, I'll start with you there. Your best bets, if you could say, sort of current lines, and then obviously maybe your game of the weekend that you're really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think at current lines, Brumbies, I'd take the Brumbies minus and the Crusaders minus. I still think there's value left in there. And I think both of those lines will probably close further in the minus than what they are now. And that's, in a sense, that's what you're looking for, right? Like if you can predict where the line's going to go.
100%, yeah. That's it. Like we always say, I mean, you're not always going to win those bets, but if in the long run, if you always ahead of the market, so to speak, that you should make money in the long run, unless you're a hell of an unlucky sod.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. Like over the long term, you're turning a 50% coin flip, into a 55%, and that's what
exactly
really.
What you need. And Chris, yourself?
Yeah, well, I was definitely loving TARS plus 12 until Nathan rocked up and ruined the party. I still think it's too. I think it's too high, but it's not like it's. Look, I still. I'm on the other side of Nathan. I like that TARS plus 12. In the spots, particularly, I also love Crusaders. So I think Crusaders points, Crusaders minus, not as high as the points, not as confident on the cap, but Crusaders points and Crusaders tries. Like I said, you could get the shop around. You get Crusaders over 6 tries at 1.8. I really like that. Force when if the Reds were if you got Reds Force at plus anything over 10, that was probably the best bet of the weekend, I would say, but that's gone. And in the URC, I'm gonna stick it out. I'll take Edinburgh at home against the Dragons. I don't think the Dragons are. We're gonna call them the pub side. They're showing that they're still a pub team. I back Edinburgh to put 40 points past them on this weekend. So those are
36.5 on Edinburgh there.
Yeah.
Okay, Farid is coming in. He likes Bristol, Exeter,
Oh yes,
and Brumbies.
Yes. English Premier, I love my English Premier. I love my points. One of my best profitable markets. Yeah, there's Bristol, Gloucester. Who they play now? So I totally forgot.
Gloucester play the Bristol Bears. Gloucester.
That's it. Yeah. Points will be I don't know what the lines are yet. I don't see it, but that's going to be points in that game for sure. And I think it's Bath, Quins. Check. Those are the two standouts. Sorry, I'm very sleepy. Yeah, Bath Quins. Yeah, there will be some points there as well. So I like those two games. I think Exeter home points at home against Newcastle. They score points. They're not as good as they used to be, but Newcastle at home away often give the home team a lot of opportunities.
100%. I think I want to comment from our side to finish the show on the try lines. And they come out quite a lot later than the points lines, but it's often worth the wait. I mean, I looked last week in their fourth game on the Sunday morning, you could get over 8.5 tries at sort of 17 to 29 to 10, and points were 63.5. And so you kind of knew that if you were backing points and there was one conversion missed, or even in that case, no conversion, you needed 10 tries anyway. So it was far better to take that line if you believed there were no penalties to be taken. And as it happened, there was a penalty under the post quite early on, and they kicked for the corner. And then I knew whether it was going to win or not, I'd made the right decision to rather go tries than points. It can, every now and again, it will surprise you, and you think it's going to be a game with no penalties, and then like DMAC will start lining them up or whatever. But just a little thing for, if you do like your points like I do and that sort of stuff as well, always have a look at the try line and then ask yourself, are there going to be penalties in this game, or is it really just a question of guys kicking for the corner? Because then you can often take misconversions out of the equation by rather taking the try line. As I said, not a hard and fast rule, but something that's worked quite well for me over the years. Excellent. What else?
You also, Brent, we'll talk about the show that I've been a bit of a degenerate betting now that I haven't been betting a lot. So I've been just playing around. And what I have actually done for fun, it's just a story. So you can get teams tied conversions at about 4-1, 5.0 decimals. So what I've done in the last 3 weeks, this is not serious stuff. This is just fun. But what I've done is I've tried to find the 3 closest games and say that they're going to equal out. It's obviously it's all luck, but I've been missing it by one game or one kick. I get it on 25, 100 to 1. Yeah. So I've been playing. That's just what I've been playing around. So I just thought, I'm noticing that it's getting close, and I'm thinking, oh, there's actually a lot of value there. It's obviously not because of you, but the point's actually making the games fun because I'm on tender hooks on every conversion. So it's actually quite. Well,
if anyone has the number for Gamblers Anonymous, now's a nice time to bring it up.
I told you.
Missing by one. I was going to say missing by one is actually probably the most common outcome. Like, that's actually kind of what these bets are designed to do. It's like, if you looked at somebody, like, and I can't remember the numbers, but it's like, if you had some 5-team multi or parlay, whatever you want to call them, missing by one is something like 10 times more likely than hitting them all, and people that don't understand probability don't get that, and they think they've been unlucky, and it's like, no, that's actually exactly the way it should be.
Yeah, there's a reason why bookmakers want punters. I mean, and I agree with you, Chris. I've been doing exactly the same thing, different bets, but I'm just having a bit of fun, and that's fine. But there's a reason why
this is all fun. There's obviously not.
If you're actually just thinking about So I was going to say, talking about fun bets, this is something that New Zealand TAB started doing, is they because they're running a fantasy competition this year. And the TAB were putting up bets like around fantasy points. So there'd be like 5 players, and you choose who had the most fantasy points, which is sort of tries, assists, meters, all this kind of stuff, which is kind of closer to the American style prop betting. If you're betting NBA and you have points, rebounds, assists, all these sorts of things. Really, really interesting, and the chances of them actually being able to price it up right are really low. So, if you do know what you're doing, there's probably some pretty big opportunities there. But it's kind of interesting because they stuck these bets up and then took them down. And I haven't seen them since. I wonder if they took a bit of a caning and decided they needed to relook at it. But the concept is super interesting, right? Because it's very much aligned with the way American betting is going, which is less on the main market lines and more on player props.
Yeah, very interesting. And I mean, just picking up on Super Rugby games, Nathan. I mean, I know there's always been betting in New Zealand, but they seem to be pushing it more now. I mean, you've got your halftime guy stands there giving you the odds on, Jordan to score.
Giving you some terrible advice.
Morgan Tierney giving you.
It's normally a guy's never played
Dalton Papali'i to score 2 tries in the second half. Put it on.
Yeah. Just never listen to anything that Israel Dag tells you. That's my.
It's Dag. That's it. It's Dag.
In terms of advice, I agree with you guys. But what is interesting is the way that something that was almost in the background previously is now getting its own little halftime, slot there on the betting, which is quite interesting. And South Africa's gone very much the same way. I mean, I had a meeting today with a guy, and we were talking about it, and I was saying, years ago you'd never see a betting advert on TV. Now, the sad thing is you don't even see a sports betting advert on TV anymore. It's all about casinos, and those are really the punters of the bookmakers one. They're not that keen on the guy who's properly studying up on his rugby and stuff like that. But anyway, gents, let's call it quits. It's been a nice, great show. Nathan, please, you could make it in. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, and Chris, enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. And thanks also, of course, to all the chaps in the live chat.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thanks. We'll see you next week for the handicap.